Good evening. I want to thank you for watching our devotional this evening. I've got a thought that I want to share with you. It's related to a book that I read some years ago. The name of the book was The Serpentine Road. Now, the book gets its name from a very difficult and dangerous road in India, and it ran close to the area where a man that was serving as a missionary lived. The fact that the road was dangerous and difficult is very indicative of the life that the man lived when he took up this missionary journey. The man's name was David Hallett. He was born in Ontario, Canada in 1935. These are some facts that I'm going to share with you about the man and from the book. In 1944, he joined the Royal Canadian Navy. And while he was in the Navy, he met a man by the name of Tom Moore. Now, I know that there's a preacher currently living in the United States, probably a very, maybe a familiar name, but the man's name's Tom Moore. I don't think that this is any relation. But anyway, met a man named Tom Moore, and Moore introduced Hallett to the church. And in 1958, he baptized Hallett into Christ. Now, after leaving the Navy, Hallett read an article in the Gospel Herald in which J.C. Bailey was calling for help in his plan to begin a mission work that he was planning and hoping to start in India. Hallett answered the call, but he had no idea for where he was headed or what this life that he was taking up was going to bring. The place would be Shillong, India, and that would be his new home. The place where he lived, they had no running water, no electricity, no bathroom, no toilet paper. Their bathroom was a bucket. And so the next time you start thinking about how hard you've got it, give some thought to that. Maybe some of you certainly can remember outhouses and things of that nature. I've had some encounters with those things myself, so you might have a little bit of perspective on this, but none of the everyday things that we think about, no internet for sure, no electricity, so obviously no internet or phone or television or any of those luxuries that we take for granted on an everyday basis. At one point, Hallett was visited by J.C. and Betty Choate. They were two very well-known missionaries, known to live in some very difficult areas. I think at one time maybe in Pakistan. Betty at this time told David that he was living in one place where she would not want to live. And that's a pretty big statement to think about people that served their lives as missionaries and lived in some very difficult places. The Indian government was constantly causing problems, which part of the reason why Hallett was able to be there was because of the Canadian connection to the French government. People from the United States had been put out many years before, and a lot of the mission work that's done and still is done today is only done through people that go and stay for a short period of time, and then they have to come back home. But Hallett, he was able to figure out a way to stay, and he battled a lot of things other than the government. Thinking about some of those things that I had listed, there were constant riots in the area. The area where he lived had constant or very numerous earthquakes. He mentioned at one point in a 3-year period they had over 2,500 earthquakes. They had a lot of rain. One day in 1978 they had 13 inches of rain. Food was so scarce there that at times he ground up the peelings of fruit and put it in some water to make some kind of a soup. He recounts a story of times when the boys that were living at the school that he was at would eat dog. And I know that sounds, pretty bad, but you think about the desperation that they were living in, using fruit peels to make soup. It's just, it was a very difficult area, and not just because of the climate, but the things to do with the government, the danger of the place that he lived. He spent almost 30 years laboring under these conditions in India. And Hallett died in December of 2011 and received very little recognition from, the brotherhood or even to the fact of the work that he had done or anything like that. But, I'm guessing that he probably was a man that if he was humble enough to take up that work, then he wasn't concerned about the recognition that he might get in some book or newspaper or on the internet. He was going to get all the recognition that he needed when he left this life and took up his home in heaven. In Matthew chapter 16, Jesus says, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 and 25. Paul, in Romans chapter 12 and verse 1, tells us that we should present our bodies as a living sacrifice. And so I ask you this evening, what does that verse mean to you? What does it mean for you to present ourselves? What does it mean for us to present ourselves as a living sacrifice? Completely giving ourselves over to God. Paul had it figured out because he realized that when he was on the road to Damascus, as the book of Acts recounts in chapter 9, he'd been persecuting Christians. The Lord could have struck him down, but he was given a second chance. And in 1 Corinthians 15, he says that chance was not going to be wasted. That grace was not going to be wasted on him, and he labored more abundantly. Friends, when I think about the grace that has been given to me and the times that I need to ask God for forgiveness, then I know I should be working as well, presenting myself as sacrifice. Hope that you'll take these thoughts, dwell on it, maybe read a book by a missionary, maybe think about really giving yourself to the Lord. If you could use some help in anything, please feel free to reach out to me or one of the elders. Thank you once again for watching, and I pray that you have a blessed evening.